Hello everybody and welcome back. As always, I'm Mateo311 and this is your channel for everything VR related. Today, we're discussing how it's an unfair comparison to put the Quest 2 up against the PlayStation VR 2. This is an extremely heated topic and I'll be playing devil's advocate for both sides, which usually means I'll just piss off everyone. Now there are of course links and timestamps if you want to skip ahead, but before we jump in, this video is brought to you by my sponsor Kiwi Design. They currently make my favorite Quest 2 Elite strap, which comes in multiple different versions. You can add an extra battery pack, high quality headphones, or even both. They also have other products like Valve Index style hand straps, and they just introduced a brand new RGB stand. Your controllers and headset magnetically connect. There's a charging indicator so you'll know when your headset's ready to go, and there's plenty of different RGB color options available. There's a link to Kiwi Design down in the description, and don't forget to use discount code Mateo311 for 5% off and to help support this channel. Recently, I triggered some individuals by having a little fun at the Quest 2's expense. I posted a YouTube short titled PlayStation VR 2 vs Quest 2, and in case you haven't seen it, here it is.
Welcome to Jurassic Park.
Now obviously this isn't a fair comparison for multiple reasons. I'm taking a highly funded launch title from a AAA studio and comparing it against the work of a small indie studio. There's also a lot to be said about the significant hardware differences between both of these platforms and the pros and cons that they bring to the table. Regardless though, the entire time I was playing through the Quest 2's Primal Hunt, I couldn't help but feeling like this was the Wish.com version of Horizon Call of the Mountain. You know, one of those, hey mom, can we get Horizon? No, you already have Horizon at home situations. But right now I could feel the Quest fanboys getting their pitchforks ready, so please allow me to change things up and actually defend your position for a change. There are plenty of benefits that the Quest 2 has over the PlayStation VR 2, so let's start there. A major, and for many individuals the most important benefit, is that the Quest 2 is significantly cheaper. For $400, you're immediately up and running with a good VR experience. Sure, you'll most likely want to buy a few accessories over time, but it will end up something like $500 versus $1,100 for the PlayStation VR 2. So for many people, this is the end of the conversation right there. It's full stop, as $400 is an acceptable price tag, but $1,100 is just outrageous. If you're scratching your head over the $1,100 price tag, that's the cost of a PlayStation 5 and a PlayStation VR 2. Now the Quest 2 also gives you a potential upgrade path and increased versatility. If you end up loving VR, you could always connect your Quest to a PC and wirelessly experience plenty of higher quality games. And on that note, we can't forget to mention that the Quest 2 is wireless, while the PlayStation VR 2 is a tethered experience. Now just a few quick counterpoints to this. So yes, the PlayStation VR 2 is much more expensive, but you also get an amazing console. So if VR doesn't end up being right for you, you're still left with some awesome hardware. And while you can use the Quest 2 for PC VR games, almost no one is exclusively developing for PC VR anymore, so you're basically only getting access to a back library of games rather than new experiences. And the upgrade cost if you need a new PC is definitely more significant than a PlayStation 5. On the con side for the Quest 2, the device is clearly underpowered and aging out. The Quest 3 is scheduled to release later this year, and the quality of native games is just undeniably underwhelming. But let's move into the pros and cons for the PSVR 2. For starters, it has better hardware. There's higher resolution OLED panels, eye tracking, enhanced haptics, and it's powered by the very beefy PlayStation 5. It also has some objectively better games. This is undeniable because we will be getting a lot of the same great games that are already in VR, but they're just going to have greatly enhanced graphics. And while that might not sound like a big deal, graphics are just so much more significant in VR. Sony's also promised to raise the bar when it comes to VR titles, bringing their quality much closer in line with flat screen games, and they also have some high quality ports of AAA games and exclusive titles on the way. But there are some quick counterpoints. Now, of course, the PlayStation VR hardware should be better. It's 2 years newer and much more expensive. And at the same time, you might say it's behind the curve. Newer headsets have released with pancake lenses, which seems to be the norm going forward. And jumping back to those games, sure, they'll be better, but we've seen the majority of the titles already. So if you're not interested in the handful of ports or exclusives, better graphics alone is not enough of a reason to get this headset. And the obvious cons on the PSVR 2 are that high price tag, which actually extends past the hardware itself, as we can expect to see higher priced games. Generally, an expensive title on the Quest 2 is $40, with the average being around $30. Well, as we move on to the PlayStation VR 2, expect to see $40, $50, and $60 become much more common. And of course, this is still also a tethered experience. But we have to focus on the most important part, the games. While many people feel it's unfair to put Quest 2 games directly up against PlayStation VR 2 games because of that hardware difference, I wholeheartedly disagree. People try to make the argument that this is like comparing PC games against mobile cell phone games. And from a hardware standpoint, that is pretty accurate, but that would mean that Quest 2 games need to go into a separate category rather than just VR games. No one considers Android mobile games in the same league of PC or console games, and it looks like people are feeling the same way about Quest titles, but they want to have it both ways. So if you want to excuse the low quality of Quest games based on its hardware, then you also have to acknowledge that it's just not in the same league with PC VR or PlayStation VR 2. And maybe we'll have to call those titles mobile VR games. After all, no one's putting the mobile cell phone version of Call of Duty up against Modern Warfare 2 on a high-end PC. But if we try to compare this against the console wars, the Nintendo Switch is not only a mobile device, but also significantly underpowered compared to its competition. Now, while that's definitely undeniable, do you think the Switch should be competing against Android phone games rather than other consoles? Of course not. Switch games might have reduced graphics, or the titles target a younger audience, but they're still in the same league. Now, taking a step back for a moment, I've currently owned 12 VR headsets, and I'm convinced that we don't need better hardware, we need better games. At the same time though, it's clear that the internals on the Quest 2 are holding back many games, leaving us with mediocre graphics and limited mechanics. The PlayStation VR 2 addresses both of these issues, giving us more horsepower and better quality games. If you put PlayStation VR 2 titles straight up against Quest 2 titles, there's just no competition. But it is repeatedly stated that comes with a high monetary price and a cable connection. It's a fair comparison though. Listen, a Tesla will outrun a Kia. You can't argue that a Tesla isn't faster. And stating that they have different technology or different price tags doesn't change this fact. And it's the same thing when it comes to VR hardware. If you buy a PlayStation VR 2, you can expect one type of experience, and if you buy a Quest 2, you can expect a different one. Now, which piece of hardware is actually better just depends on your personal needs. Now, I'm sure for some, this discussion will feel like it's dividing the community, but it's actually quite the opposite. Just like on a personal level, if you can't acknowledge shortcomings, you will never improve. You should never just snap back with an excuse or rebuttal, but rather truly analyze those shortcomings and try to improve in the future. We also need to be a little bit more lighthearted and willing to take a joke. Fanboyism is what truly divides the community. And while I do take a lot of cheap shots at the Quest 2, that's mainly because it's the most popular headset and it's an easy target. I've also been very quick to acknowledge the fact that Meta is the only one truly investing in consumer VR right now, and they've single-handedly made VR games profitable for many developers. So let's just finish up with two more quick topics. First off, we can't really compare anything just yet. The PlayStation VR 2 is still a month away from launch. No one's really had enough hands-on experience to do a true side-by-side comparison, and you don't know what's going to happen down the road. This headset might have an amazing launch, but a few weeks from now, it's just sitting around collecting dust. My YouTube short was just me having a little fun, comparing two similar games with vastly different graphic quality levels, and I never expected anyone to take it more than a silly joke. Sometimes it just plain sucks that a certain platform is outside your price range, or that there's exclusive titles. Content creators like myself are a pain in the ass because we have everything. This makes us appear like we don't appreciate anything, but in truth, we're just constantly making comparisons and trying to find the best product that suits our needs. It's really hard for me to understand when someone so adamantly takes one side and vehemently opposes competitors. Now, I'm not sure if it stems from jealousy or fanboyism, but we need to move past that crap and just get the device that suits your needs and don't care about what else anyone thinks, just have a good time.
And that was today's video, brought to you by my dad, Mateo311. If you enjoyed it, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. And if you're new here,
Consider subscribing.
consider subscribing.
Consider subscribing.
Consider subscribing.
Consider subscribing. We'll see you guys on next time.
We'll see you guys on next time.